All right, we are live on Facebook and here on Zoom. Welcome to another Monday Masterclass with me, Coach Nat, the Keto Bikini Pro. And tonight we are talking about keto adaptation, the process of adapting to keto, if you will, becoming fat adapted, becoming keto adapted, and what the difference is between being in ketosis, being fat adapted, and being keto adapted. So I'm jumping into the group. It looks like we are live in there. Hey, Helen, happy Monday to you too. Yay, thank you for commenting so I know it's working. Let me also take a peek at the questions, make sure I didn't miss any new questions that may have come in today on the topic. Ooh, great new questions about testing ketones. Let me make note of that so I don't forget to talk about it. Okay. As usual, let me go through some of the questions that we got, comments that we got on this topic from those of you in the group. Thank you for asking, because it really helps to make sure that I address the things you want to know about these topics and not just the things I like to geek out about. So, cool. I think I've now grabbed all of, oh wait, always have to check a couple of places. I post things, if you don't know, I post things in many places in the group because I never know who's going to see them where. And of course, I want to give as many people an opportunity to see them and ask their questions as possible. So we have a little chat going. Okay, great. I grabbed that question. I grabbed that question. Awesome. I think that's everywhere now. Cool. Okay, let me go back to seeing the live video. Yay, okay. All right, so some of the things I planned on talking about tonight, and I will break down in more detail, and that is, how are those three different terms in ketosis, fat adapted and keto adapted, different? What do they mean? What are the intricacies of each one? I will talk about how to know that you've become adapted, about how long it takes. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you like this many weeks for everyone. It's all the same, you know, as you could probably guess if you've watched any of my videos, it is very individual. But I'll give you some things to think about there, how to know how long it could take for you. And then some of the other great questions we got asked related to the topic, maybe a little bit different, but I will address as well. Can you become adapted without electrolytes? Great question from Tiffany. The short answer to that is, can you? Yes. Yes, you can become adapted without electrolytes. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be taking electrolytes. So I will talk about that. You can't, like, electrolytes are not necessary for the adaptation process to occur, but your transition will be a lot more friendly or enjoyable if you use electrolytes to get you through it. So I will talk a little bit more about that. And then address the confusion about the whoosh effect that you hear so much in some groups. Helen, was it you that asked that question? I'm trying to remember who asked that question because I'd love a little more detail on that. Let's see, where was it? It was Helen, great. Tell me more about the confusion or the controversy. What have you been hearing about in these groups about the whoosh effect? I think I know what you're talking about when you say that. I think you're talking probably about the water weight loss that happens at the beginning of your keto journey. Okay, she says yes. So yes. Yeah. So, and that's a very much related to the electrolyte issue and kind of what's happening at the beginning when you cut the carbs out. So I'll definitely talk about that. And then just saw a question about testing ketones. I will talk about that. And then somewhat unrelated to the transition was a question about keto and hair loss. And I will just answer this real quick right here. Keto does not cause your hair to fall out. There's nothing about keto or dropping the carbs that is going to cause hair loss. If we're seeing hair loss, it's likely due to other things. It's likely due to malnutrition, being undernourished, so potentially just not eating enough, period. And likely, possibly not eating enough protein. Those are typically the things I see with the hair loss is significant weight loss in a short period of time, very fast weight loss, and large amounts of weight loss can cause hair loss. Being in steep calorie deficit, not eating enough food, not eating enough protein, big time. So those things can happen if you think about the way people do the keto diet. A lot of people are thinking that they need to have super low protein on a keto diet. And if that's the case, that may be why it's associated or why you're hearing it in keto groups, or you're hearing that it's associated with keto. It's not anything having to do with the nutritional state of ketosis or fat adaptation or keto adaptation that causes hair loss. So hopefully that clears that up a little bit. It's not a function of a keto diet. It's likely a function of people doing a keto diet in not a healthy way. Basically, the things that I say not to do. Don't do anything drastic. Don't cut your protein super low, and don't look for fast, quick, miracle results, right? These magic pill kind of results. Fast weight loss is not the kind of weight loss we want. Oh, thank you, Maria, our resident doc in the group. Post-viral and other stressors to the body cause the hair loss, not keto. Thank you. Yeah, there can be all kinds of other things going on too. So if you're getting hair loss, first of all, look at what you're doing with your diet and are you doing this the right way? And then definitely talk to your doctor because there could be something else entirely going on that has nothing to do with keto. And if you're talking with a traditional doctor, I wouldn't even call it keto what you're doing. I would say, nutrient dense whole foods. I'm eating, however, if you are doing more of a dirty keto or 80-20 or one of those low protein keto, then yeah. Once again, first of all, fix your protein, increase your protein, and that will likely help. Thank you, Jen. I've got the hair and the lashes done, so I'm feeling extra fancy right now. Okay, so let's go back up to a couple of these questions that are otherwise not included in my notes, so I don't miss them. So I'll address them at the front end. So that was the hair loss piece, done. Let's talk about the whoosh effect. Yeah, so the whoosh effect, there's a couple of things going on with the whoosh effect. And there is the dropping of water when you go keto. So Helen asked, how will you lose a lot of water? Okay, so when you cut carbs, the molecule, and I'm not talking about a gram or like it's not a gram of weight of a carb, but it is the molecule of the carbohydrate. Every molecule of carbohydrate carries 3 molecules of water. So just by virtue of cutting your carbs, you are losing water along with the carbs. So this is something that we hear a lot in the bodybuilding space because bodybuilders and bodybuilding coaches will tell you, you have to have carbs to make your muscles look full. Why they say that is because that water is in the muscle cell. So it is inside the cell. It's the same reason why people say that you get You will hold water if you are taking creatine, because creatine is pulling that water into the muscle cell. So they say that carbs make your muscles look fuller for that reason, and that when you drop the carbs out, you look flat. Your muscles look flat because you've lost water. This can also be why people say, I'm holding water or I'm retaining water, and you feel bloated, or you think you look watery or spilled over. This is one of the things where bodybuilders play around. Bodybuilders who do a traditional type of a bodybuilding prep for a show, they use carbs as their source of fuel, not fat. So they're not in a ketogenic state. They're not fat adapted, which we'll get into, of course, the topic of today's class. They're not doing it that way. They're not a fat adapted. So when they cut those carbs out at the end, they cut their carbs out and then they bring them back in so that they get this pumped look on stage. And they play around with their water and their sodium and their carbs, because water, sodium, and carbs are the biggest factors when it comes to your fluid levels in your body. These bodybuilders, they're using bro science to try and get themselves to look dried out and then filled up, which natural bodybuilders have discovered really, the science doesn't play out on that. That is a bro science. It's not real science. So you can really severely screw yourself up. And there are competitors who have ended up in the hospital with severe edema by trying to mess with their fluid levels in that way. So the reason why we say you get this whoosh on the scale, whoosh on the scale is like you dropping weight on the scale quickly, because one of the things I always like to point out to women is that we need to, the reason we obsess so much over the scale is because we're seeing regular day-to-day water fluctuations. And the water, the fluid level in our bodies is constantly trying to find this homeostatic balance. So if we do something that throws it off, it's trying to put it back to where it's comfortable and familiar with. Things that disrupt your water balance, like I just said, water consumption, sodium, potassium, carbohydrates. These things are all major shifters of our fluid balance. So typically when we cut out carbs, especially drastically, like if you're going standard American diet or high carb diet to a keto diet, we're getting rid of a lot of these molecules that are holding water in our bodies. So the water is going to be flushed out with the carbohydrates. Now, when we're flushing water from our bodies, the other thing we lose is electrolytes along with them. Those will get flushed out. And if you're one of these people who's like, I'm going to drink a gallon of water to hydrate myself, then you're flushing more electrolytes out if you're not consuming electrolytes with that water as well. So, I mean, that's a kind of a quick, simple explanation for the loss of water, or the water weight loss we talk about losing on the scale at the beginning of a low carb or ketogenic diet. And I've seen this as well in myself, even going from keto to carnivore, or going from carnivore to lion diet, dropping another 10 grams of carbs. It can be as small as a 10-gram change. So let's say you're doing keto and you're frustrated because you're seeing your weight is up and down all the time. You're like, but I'm hitting my macros. But for your carbs, you're just trying not to go over a number, but you might have some days where you're eating 10 carbs. Another day you might eat 20 carbs. Another day you might eat 30 carbs, but it's all keto. And you're wondering why the weight keeps going up and down the scale. That could be it. Because with those carbs going up and down, your water fluid balance in your body is going up and down. Another reason why you should weigh yourself daily, so you can see all these fluctuations and you get very familiar with the fluctuations in your body. Because some people have bigger swings than others, and it just means that your fluid levels are likely a little more sensitive. Your body's a little more sensitive to fluid changes than others. Those people with high blood pressure, you know how important it is that you need to be watching your sodium levels, your hydration, because that's going to drastically change the fluid balance, and it will change your blood pressure. I hope that explains it. But there is another whoosh effect that happens, and this is with fat loss. because it has to do with the fat. And I'm not going to get into a lot of this on this masterclass because I want to get into the topic at hand. But it has to do with the way that fat is oxidized and leaves the body. So it has to be liberated from the fat cells. And generally, you're going to have, if you notice that during a cut, maybe you'll have a week where your weight will maintain or bobble around the same place, and then you'll get a drop. And I know a lot of y'all here have experienced that because I'm working with you and I've seen it on your charts. And you start to get familiar. It's great to get familiar with this because you start to realize, okay, it's going to look like I'm maintaining or I'm bobbling. I'm going up and down, up and down, up and down. And then you typically will see a drop on the scale. And then you'll bobble a little bit more and you'll see another drop. That's typically the way it works. And that's because your fat cells, before they shrink or before they die off, the water is going into the cell and it's hanging out there while you're losing the fatty acids, while the fatty acids are getting oxidized. So as this is happening, then all of a sudden the water leaves the cell and you get a whoosh. So there's a couple of different ways that the whoosh is happening. You have your whoosh with losing water weight from carbs, and then you have the whoosh happening at these small intervals. And the thing is, it's a little bit different for different people. Some people have exactly like I described, those type of drops. Other people have a little bit more of a linear type of a drop when you look at their charts over longer periods of time. Day to day, week to week, you're not likely going to see much of a trend at all. This is why I say weigh daily and then look at it over time, and you'll start to see, you'll either have a slope that's a little more like this or one that's a little more mountainous, if you will. But that's typically what's happening there. It's these little mini water whooshes as you go. Let me know if that helps explain the whoosh effect. Okay. Let's see, let's get back into electrolytes a little bit because I'm not going to go into them in depth as we get into the rest of this, but then I will definitely talk about signs you're becoming fat adapted and I think that was all the questions. Oh, the ketones, we're going to talk about ketone testing. All right, so electrolytes. Let's talk about the role of electrolytes really quickly. And this relates to the keto flu, so I will talk about that a little bit later too. But the role of electrolytes is basically, like we just said, at the beginning, you're going to lose that water. You're also going to lose electrolytes. So you need to replace the electrolytes as you replace the water so you can stay hydrated at the level that you need to be. If you don't consume electrolytes as you're making that transition, you've probably experienced keto flu symptoms. Headaches, fatigue, muscle cramps, and muscle aches. Those are the three big ones. There's some other things, but for the most part, those are the big ones: headaches, fatigue, muscle cramps. Some people get these worse than others. It's just a matter of your body and the way that your body regulates the fluid. So some people have to be a lot more diligent about their electrolytes. Others don't. It could have to do too with how strict you're being on keto, how low you set your carbs on keto, how quickly you tried to get into ketosis. If you went straight from standard American diet to 20 carbs a day total, that's going to be a major shock to your body. Whereas if you, let's say, like I did it, I slowly went from cleaning up my diet and getting junk out to going paleo. I did that for 5 or 6 years before I tried to go keto. I was already fat adapted, which we're going to get into in a moment. So I didn't experience keto flu the first time I went keto. I didn't use electrolytes the first time I went keto, but my body had been very familiar with real food, low carb dieting by that point. So real foods don't have sodium. They have very minimal sodium compared to processed packaged foods. So just going to a whole foods based way of eating, even if you haven't gone keto, is going to shift things. You have to salt your food more. You're going to need to use some more electrolytes. I salted my food, but didn't supplement with electrolytes for a very long time at the beginning. And that could have a lot to do with why different people have different needs when it comes to electrolytes. So what type of diet you were on, how strict and quick you're going into ketosis and things of that nature. All right, so let's get into ketosis in that case. I need to remember to talk about testing ketones. No, let's go ahead and answer that question on the front end. No, you don't need to you don't need to test ketones. Boom, easy, done. No, it's not that simple. I mean, at the beginning, if you would like to test your ketones to see if you're getting into a state of ketosis, that's perfectly fine. Typically, what I recommend is test your ketones at the beginning. When you're first going keto, or if you've had some time away and you're going back on the keto diet, you can use the pee strips just to see if you're peeing out ketones. You can use the blood ketone meters to see if there's ketones in your blood, or you can use the breath meters. Any of them will do at the beginning. You're just trying to see if you have ketones present. But over time, as you become adapted, you will not pee them out. Hopefully you will no longer be peeing them out. Your body will be using the ketones for fuel, and then those tests are not going to register, at least not as high as they used to. So it's not really helpful anymore. And even in your blood, you shouldn't just have ketones floating around in your blood for no reason. You should be using them. So likely, this is why I always say don't chase ketones. Don't look for high ketones on a test to know whether you're doing well or not. Look at your results. Are you getting the results that you want? Because you can likely, and I don't know if I've said this on Masterclass, I say this to clients all the time. You don't have to use keto to meet your fat loss and body composition goals. You can do it. I can put you on any diet and you can get those results. So it's not about being in a state of ketosis that's creating the results. It's about being in a caloric deficit, not over consuming fats and or carbs, and eating enough protein, training properly, recovering properly, all the things I talk about all the time. Those are the things that are driving your results. So the state of ketosis, although it can have some great benefits, is not the goal. And I'll get into that right now. All right, so ketosis versus fat adapted versus keto adapted. What's the difference? And does it matter? Well, yes. First, let's define our terms, as I like to do. You may have seen these terms used interchangeably, but they are not the same. Ketosis is a metabolic state characterized by raised levels of ketone bodies in body tissues. So, if you have ketones, if your body's producing ketones, you are in a ketogenic state. That's all it means. So this is where, if you want to test ketones to see if you're getting into ketosis, that's what it's going to tell you, whether or not you're in ketosis. It's not going to tell you anything about your results, but it can tell you whether or not you're in ketosis. So if you're just starting out or just getting back to a ketogenic diet and you want to make sure that your carbs are sufficiently low enough that you are producing ketones in your body, that's the time to test. Okay, because let's say you cut your carbs, but you're only tracking net carbs, which my other pro tip is to always track total carbs. It's okay to know what your net carbs are, to know what your fiber is, but you should know what your total carbs are. It's very likely that your carbs are not low enough for you to be producing ketones. So in that case, sure, test during that time. But ketosis is not the same as the other two terms. So fat adaptation, what does fat adaptation mean? This is a metabolic state of being able to effectively utilize and burn fatty acids. So you're able to use fat for fuel. That's what some people think keto means. But now you know that that is not the same. Being in a state of ketosis just means you have ketones. Your body's producing ketones. Being fat adapted means your body can break down fatty acids for fuel. Now, here's the mind-blowing concept. You can be fat adapted and not in ketosis. You can be fat adapted and not be producing ketones or using ketones. You can burn fatty acids for fuel without keto. Is that a shocker to anyone? I know a lot of people who can burn fatty acids, meaning you're losing body fat without being in ketosis. I did it for many years myself. Even on a high carb diet, you can lose fat, which means your body is burning body fat. Okay, so then what's keto adaptation? Keto adaptation is a physiological process whereby your cells have adapted to using ketones and fatty acids for fuel. Because ketones are not the same thing as fatty acids. They are a different substrate. So the simple difference between being in ketosis and being fat adapted is the ability of your body to utilize fat for fuel. Just because you're producing ketones does not mean your body knows how to use them. So which of these is the most beneficial? Can you see why we don't have ketosis as the goal? Because just being in ketosis doesn't necessarily mean that your body can burn body fat. Which one of these states do you think you should be striving for on your quest for optimal health and body composition? Let's look at the benefits of each. Okay, so ketosis, the state of nutritional ketosis, now you can see, hopefully, that it is a means to an end. It's not the end in itself. You're not seeking the state of nutritional ketosis. The fact is, simply being in a state of ketosis may not feel so good before you become keto adapted or fat adapted, particularly keto adapted, because if your body doesn't know what to do with those ketones, it's likely that you're experiencing that keto flu. Now, generally, the keto flu is an electrolyte imbalance, and you can, like I said, you don't need the electrolytes to get fat adapted. It has nothing to do with the process of that, but it will make you feel better on your way to fat adaptation or keto adaptation. Because when you don't have those electrolytes, that's what's causing all those fuel symptoms, flu-like symptoms. Okay, so most people enter a state of ketosis from time to time, even if they're carb sugar burners, if they haven't eaten for a while, or if they've intentionally or unintentionally deprived their bodies of carbohydrates. But if they're not keto adapted, the body sees this as a state of emergency. It will produce ketones as an alternative backup fuel until it gets carbs again. And then it's still seeking the carbs. So for all my ladies who are struggling with cravings, ask yourself, how long have you been strict keto? Because your body's likely still looking for carbs. This is why so many people struggling to maintain a ketogenic lifestyle, they struggle when they're having these cheats or these carb ups before they've gotten adapted. They end up battling low energy, brain fog, headaches, and other forms of keto flu over and over again as they go in and out of ketosis. They're sending their bodies on a blood sugar roller coaster. This is basically what happens when you're forcing your body into ketosis, but you're not keto adapted. It's your body's producing ketones, but it hasn't yet ramped up the machinery that it needs to properly utilize those ketones for fuel. So it still wants glucose. I call this energy purgatory. And that's typically this is one of the reasons why I don't recommend carb cycling. especially if you haven't spent a significant amount of time adapting first. But even after, I don't recommend carb cycling. Okay. Now let's talk about fat adaptation on the other hand. A lot of people attribute the benefits of weight loss and stable energy and performance enhancements to ketone, to being in ketosis. But many of these benefits are actually due to fat adaptation. So fat loss versus water weight loss, right? That water weight loss is that initial entering ketosis. Great, yay, it feels good to get some of that water off. But that's not fat loss, right? Actual fat loss many times is more attributed to the fat adaptation process. Your body being able to burn its own fat as fuel. Control of cravings, like I just said, once you've gotten through the initial adaptation and you're becoming fat adapted is when your cravings die down. Your hunger dies down. You need less food. You have more steady energy. You have better mental performance and endurance capacity. You're able to go for longer in your workouts and doing these endurance exercise. Once that stuff, you start to feel better, you start to experience all those things. So, y'all were asking about how do you know you're getting adapted? Here's some signs, right? You start getting real fat loss beyond the initial water weight. Your cravings are now under control. You're not as hungry. You have steady energy. You have great mental performance, and you're able to engage in your physical activity without getting fatigued. But the main benefit of fat adaptation is that once you're fat adapted, you can handle a carb load and rapidly return to burning fat once your blood sugar and insulin levels subside. So becoming fat adapted, like I said, it does not require you to be in nutritional ketosis. It just means that your body can tap into its fat stores, break them down, and use them as energy. We actually all have the capacity to do this. This is where that term metabolically flexible comes in. The more easily you're able to switch between using the two fuel sources, carbs and fats, that's what we call being metabolically flexible, which many people say is the goal, right? I would say that's a great goal to have, but and I've heard this question asked before about, well, then if I've been keto for a long time, don't I have to then become carbohydrate flexible? Like, don't I have to become metabolically flexible by adding carbs back in so that I can handle them well? No, because your body will always prioritize burning glucose first in oxidative priority. So glucose is oxidized before fats and ketones. So if you have glucose present, your body's naturally going to burn that first. So you don't have to become flexible the other way. You have to teach your body to become flexible by being able to burn body fat, being able to burn fat for fuel. Once it can do that, so I would say majority of the time you want to be fat adapted, you want to be low enough carb that you're teaching your body on a regular basis to burn fat for fuel. And then every so often, if you engage in consuming some carbs, your body should be able to burn through that quickly and then quickly get back to fat oxidation. Does that make sense? So you don't have to relearn how to burn carbs for fuel. Your body doesn't have to be taught that. So fat adapted just means you can easily access your body fat or dietary fat for consuming dietary fat, which we all should be consuming a certain amount of that. So having carbs now and then, provided it's not excessive and not too frequently and not in too large of an amount, it should be no problem for fat adapted individuals. Think about a fat adapted athlete having a steak with some large sweet potatoes or sweet potato fries. The carbs will definitely kick them out of ketosis, but that's not a problem. By morning, they'll be burning fat again. So you think about being fat adapted, you've increased your resilience, but you don't necessarily have to go keto to make that happen. Like I said, that happened for me just going paleo. Basically low carb, whole foods with a focus on protein and healthy fats. Now let's talk about the third one, keto adaptation. Now, whereas fat adaptation can occur to varying degrees depending on the degree of carb restriction, keto adaptation is going to require more reshaping of some physiological systems. So, keto adaptation is only going to happen when carbs are restricted to the point that induces sustained nutritional ketosis. This means you have reduced your carbs so low that now your body has to produce an alternative fuel source, and it's going to start producing ketones because now your body is deprived of more of the carb substrate. So a keto adapted person is by definition fully fat adapted, but a fat adapted person may not be keto adapted. So if you're keto adapted, you're also fat adapted, but it doesn't work the other way around. Okay, so the benefits you may gain from being keto adapted or how keto adapted you are will vary according to the duration that you've been on the ketogenic diet. Studies show that athletes that have been on a ketogenic diet 6 months or more have adapted to be able to recover their muscle glycogen. This is the carb stores in their muscles. Their muscle glycogen levels at the same rate as athletes on a high carb diet. This is huge because a lot of the things you'll hear in the fitness industry is that, oh, keto is so bad for you long term because you have to be able to restore your muscle glycogen and you need carbs to do that after a workout. So that's really powerful science to know that athletes who have been essentially keto adapted, they've been keto long enough, and this study said 6 months or more, they now can recover their muscle glycogen, their carb stores in their muscles, without consuming carbs at the same rate as athletes on a high carb diet. Now, this is not the same for athletes who go on a ketogenic diet for 4 weeks. That's the difference. This is why so many bodybuilders and endurance athletes and everybody pretty much in the athletic world wants to tell you keto is bad for you because they've only ever tried it for these short periods of time and they felt like garbage. They went through keto flu. They probably were already eating low fat because on a high carb diet, anybody that you see that's super fit, lean on a high carb diet, they're not eating much in the way of fats. Probably undernourished, by the way. Probably not serving their hormonal health with enough healthy fats. So they drop out the carbs and now they have no fat, no carbs, they have no energy fuel coming in. They're probably eating high protein, which is already a recipe for disaster. They feel like crap because they're going through the keto flu. They never allowed their bodies to adapt. They say keto doesn't work. It's terrible for athletes. You shouldn't do it. That's why they're saying that. But if they did that long enough to adapt, they would get the same benefits. Jennifer's like, wow, yeah. And for anybody who may want to quote this, I need to get better about learning how to plug in, attribute to my resources or my sources. But I wrote a blog post about this. This is where I'm teaching this from. It is in draft right now, but I'm about to publish it and I will share it in the group on my blog. I'm resurrecting the website, so a lot more stuff is going to go there. But I have included all the sources at the bottom of that article. I didn't attribute it where each source is. Sorry about that. But in the bottom of that article, you'll see all of my resources. So you'll be able to click and learn more and geek out on the science of this stuff. Okay, Jessica, great question about how long does it take? I think that was the very next part I was getting to. So perfect question, perfect timing. Okay, let's see. So now that we've established ketosis is not the goal. Keto adaptation is really the end goal if you're going to be on a ketogenic diet. Or let's say you don't want to be on a ketogenic diet, you just want to do low carb and you want the body composition benefits. Focus on fat adaptation, and you can do that without necessarily needing to keto adapt. That's for all my ladies who really struggle with sticking to a ketogenic diet. You're constantly back and forth, right? focus on low carb. That'll get you most of the way there with your body composition. Don't necessarily need to force yourself into ketosis if it's not enjoyable for you, if it's that much of a struggle. Okay, so how long to keto adapt? How long does it take to go from being in ketosis to becoming keto adapted? This is, unfortunately, sorry, this is the how long is a piece of string question. So this is going to depend on you, your genes, your long-term diet, how sensitive you are to insulin, your training status, your health status, your body composition. There's going to be a lot of things that play into how long it's going to take for you. So unfortunately, I can't answer, like, everybody doesn't have the same amount of time. Simply put, patience, grasshopper. Unfortunately, there's just no way to rush the process. So for newbies, the most important thing is staying strictly on your keto macros, keeping those carbs sufficiently low enough for long enough of a period of time that it allows you to become keto adapted. So your consistency with adherence is more important than anything else. The stricter you are, and I will say, the lower carb you go, it may be a little harsher because you're gonna drop those carbs out. You're gonna drop that water, but if you're prepared with your electrolytes, then it will be a much smoother process. But you will get there much faster if you fully commit and go all in, rather than this like back and forth. So the best way to get fully keto adapted the fastest is to commit to following the plan 100% with 0 cheats for months, not days, not weeks. So you can get into ketosis. Here's the short answer. You can get into ketosis quickly as overnight, 1 day, 2 days. That can take longer for certain people than others. It will take longer if you are trying to do more carbs along that route, or whether if you are continuing to eat processed packaged foods. So fastest way to get into ketosis in the first place, drop those carbs under 20 total. Go carnivore, go 0 carb. You're going to get into ketosis really quickly. Do a little fasting at the beginning. But from ketosis to keto adapted, it could take 6 to 8 weeks. It could take 6 to 8 months. It's really going to depend on your current status. I will tell you, most of the time for athletes, it's quicker. So if you're already active, if you're already training, if you're already doing cardio, something active, and you're going to be burning through your carb stores faster, burning through your fuel faster, it may not take as long. If you're insulin sensitive, it may not take as long. If you're insulin resistant, if you struggle with, more advanced medical issues, it could take longer. So consider your status and your objectives. What are your goals? Are you already fat adapted? Are you looking to lose body fat? Are you looking to improve your overall health? What is your goal? Do you need to be in ketosis for that? Or is fat adaptation sufficient? Here's a simple way for those who ask, how do you know, if you're adapted? Here's a simple way of kind of gauging your level of fat or keto adaptation. Can you comfortably go several hours without eating and feel no hypoglycemic effects? So you're not getting hangry, fatigued, headachy. Do you have good, steady physical energy levels? Are you physically energetic throughout the day? Or is it blood sugar roller coaster? Is your mind sharp and thinking clear? Are you able to focus on tasks? Do you feel hungry versus hangry? When you have physical hunger, is it just a stomach hunger? Okay, I'm hungry, I need to eat a meal. Or is it like, I better get food now? And then do you crave protein and fat-rich meals rather than sweets or starch? If you're still having major cravings for sweets, now I generally talk about mental and emotional. There's a mental and emotional side of this. There's habit change that's playing in as well. That can certainly have probably the biggest impact on sweet cravings. But if you're physiologically craving sweets and starch, and it's not just a habitual thing or an emotional thing, that's a really big sign that you are not yet adapted. And then here's another sign. If you have a cheat and you go through keto flu all over again when you try to go back into ketosis, you are certainly not adapted. If you have a hard time, if you notice you are not metabolically flexible, go back into that keto flu period every time you go into ketosis, then you're probably not yet adapted. Jessica says, I've only been in ketosis for 3 weeks, but cravings have decreased for sure. Fantastic. You're on your way, girl. You're on your way. Oh, and then there's one more thing I definitely wanted to address on this call that is not in the article, but training while transitioning, going through that transition to become fat adapted. If you are an untrained individual, so you have been sedentary and now you're going keto and you also want to start strength training and maybe doing cardio, you want to do something, you're trying to throw everything at it to get the results you want. The initial first 2, maybe 4 weeks is not the time I would start a brand new training program. If you're sedentary, if you have not been training at all, at least get through the first week before you do any additional activity. And then, 2, 3, 4 weeks in, you could start a new program, or at least, start taking walks, doing some kind of light activity if you're sedentary. If you were already doing some level of physical activity before you started your transition, you can continue to do that level of activity, or bump it up a little bit more to help yourself push through and get into ketosis and thriving in it. But I wouldn't ramp up your activity greatly during that transition, at least not the first few weeks. And if you are an athlete, already highly physically active, or you're performing, you have sports performance to worry about, you need to know that during those first 4 or so weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, your performance can take a nosedive. Be prepared for that and shock it up and say, hey, make your decision about whether or not you're trying to get fat adapted, whether or not it's important to you to be keto adapted, or whether low carb would be good enough for you. And if you're trying to get keto adapted, recognize that that is the goal and be okay with your performance not being where it was during that time frame. If you're struggling a lot with keto flu during that time frame and you're an athlete and you still want to be able to perform, electrolytes, hydration, proper sleep, proper recovery, not overtraining, those things I talk about all the time. For those who are really curious about the electrolyte piece, I did a whole hydration masterclass all about water and electrolytes. Go check it out in the group. If there's ever a topic that you're curious about and you're not sure if I did a masterclass on it, I have guides in the group with all of the masterclasses that I've done. And in the events section, all of the past events have all of the masterclasses, and they all have replays, and they're only right now shared in the group. I haven't shared them anywhere else. They are unlisted on my YouTube channel, and you would not be able to find them if you were just searching for my YouTube channel. It's all right here just for you in this group. So you can search the group. The group has a search bar at the top, just like Google, where you can type in anything and it will likely pull up if I've done a masterclass on it. And if not, you can post a comment or drop me a DM and request a masterclass topic. I'm always looking for new topics. So happy to have more ideas. And I can always drill down more on past topics if I didn't address your question in those topics. So feel free to always drop your questions. I love, love, love them. There's never too many questions. Jessica says, I've been lifting consistently for 2 years. Energy is not noticeably different. I do have hangry moments, especially after lifting. Yeah, that's a really common thing I see is headaches or hanger or cravings directly after a workout, because now you've dropped your blood sugar. Your blood sugar is going to increase when you work out. That's a regular phenomenon, and then you might get that drop again. So it's going to send you a little bit of a spike and a drop with training. So that's very common. Pop some extra electrolytes before or during your workout. That's typically a great way to head that off. A little shot of sodium before or intra workout instead of intra carbs, like a lot of athletes do. Carbs pre-workout or intra workout, you can basically say, instead of doing carbs, I'm going to do sodium. Tiffany says, I'm hungry after my morning workouts when I didn't used to be. I would guess that is from the deficit we just dropped you into, my dear. Which can absolutely be another thing. And that's something that we kind of have to look at on the keto thing. Everything's not always about keto here. We're here, you're here, most of you are here because you want to change your body, so you're in a deficit. So when we're in a deficit, it's gonna get hungry, especially after training. And for those of you, I have a cardio masterclass, by the way, who have added cardio to continue your fat loss. Cardio is known to increase those hunger signals and can cause cravings as well. It's another reason why I'm very careful about prescribing cardio to clients. We don't do it willy-nilly, very carefully. Tiffany says, I need more calories. You'll get some pretty soon here. I issued her a challenge this week. I was like, you need to show me that you're earning your more calories. So she's got to nail her macros to get us to the place where we can start bringing them back up again. She knows I play. I love it. I love the banter. Does anybody else have any questions I didn't answer about ketosis, fat adaptation, anything on the adaptation process, the transition? She said she's on point. Yes. That's what I'm talking about. This girl doesn't shy away from a challenge. Back down. I was trying to say shy away and back down. Shy down. She don't shy down from a challenge. It's so funny how I get to know my clients' personalities. It's like some people I have to be really gentle with, and others like, all right, I'm challenging you. And then they're like, oh, I'm gonna show her. I love it. All right, ladies, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I think we're done for tonight. I got another one. Yes. Jennifer says, Jessica says, any tips for getting in fats? Oh, girl. I'm the one that is going to cry when you take my fats away. So I got all the tips for getting in your fat. Like, it's too easy for me to get in fats. The biggest thing, if you're struggling getting in your fats, you're probably eating pretty lean sources of protein. Every time I get that question about, I'm having a hard time eating enough fat, well, one of two things is happening. Either your fat macro is too high and it doesn't need to be that high, or if it does actually need to be as high as it is, if you have your macros right and you're struggling to get in enough fats, you're probably eating really lean proteins. So I would look at your sources of protein and go into picking fattier cuts of meat, and that will do it. I always say, get as much of your fats from meat as possible, like already in the meat, rather than adding a bunch of excess fat. If you're going to add fat from another source, then my favorite sources are tallow, lard. I don't do butter, but butter or ghee. Animal fats, stable fats to cook with, or drizzling olive oil, avocados, whole avocados. I just started eating again. I'm really enjoying them. Olives are a good source of like food fat. Bacon, those are all some of my favorite sources of fat. Bacon grease, so if you save the bacon grease, you can use that to cook with. But I would aim for red meat, fattier meat, lamb, super fatty, certain cuts of pork. If you're doing chicken breasts, please stop. You're just getting nothing from that but protein. There's like no nutrition. So chicken thighs, skin on chicken thighs. If you're gonna do chicken breast with the skin on, all great sources of fat. But red meat is gonna be your best, most nutrient dense options on the planet. Whole eggs, if you're not doing whole eggs with the yolks, please eat the yolks. So much more nutrient dense. There's no nutrients in egg whites. You're only getting protein. So get your fats from all those places. Jennifer says, I'm working with Nat come April. Can't wait. Woo woo. I can't wait either, girls. Getting close, a couple more weeks. Let's see. Crystal says, tips on getting more protein. Exactly the opposite of what I just said. Take your meats and look at your sources of protein, and if you're trying to manage your fats, which I know she is, and get more protein without more fat, switch to leaner cuts of meat. Or what I like to do in a cut, combine my fattier meats with my leaner meats. So I can still enjoy my fattier meats, but in smaller amounts, and then I increase my leaner meats. And then other sources, so egg whites, like I said, it's unfortunate, but when you're in a cut, you're really going to sacrifice some more nutrition for the protein. But let's see, my favorite leaner sources are, I changed the percentage of ground beef that I get. So when I'm doing higher fat, I'm doing like 85-15. And when I'm doing leaner, I go for 93-7, 90-10, 96-4. So just leaner beefs, leaner cuts of steak, top sirloin is leaner. I am working on a protein cheat sheet for y'all that I wanted to do for the protein masterclass. So I'm actually gonna make good on that. That will show you the difference between fattier cuts of meat and leaner meats. But tuna in a can is super lean, chicken, turkey, egg whites, whitefish, super lean, my personal favorite, flounder, and cod, shrimp, nothing but protein. You can always just add some shrimp, combine your proteins. So in one meal, I never eat just one protein. I typically have 2 or more. Jen asks, can too much protein cause digestive issues? Protein threshold. I will say yes if you're not getting enough fat. So if your protein's super high and your fat super low, absolutely. I've seen that happen many times with people trying to do a PSMF, which is another reason why I do not recommend PSMF pretty much for anyone ever. Alice asks for a masterclass on doing a cut. Lovely lady, I got you covered. There is one in the group on cutting. So I will tag you under that masterclass, or you can search in the group for it. It is in there. I did one on cutting season. I did one on building season, and I even did one on maintenance. Tammy said excited for a masterclass. I know Tammy had another comment, but I missed it. Let me go back up and find it. I love the chatter, y'all. This is great. Where's the rest of the comments? Why is it not showing any of them? Maybe if I click on it, it'll take me into where the rest of the comments are. I guess it's not letting me see the older comments. So Tammy, I know you made a comment before this one and I'm not seeing it again. Okay, she said, mine was if I've been off anything healthy for months, can I do a lion diet? Oh, girl, I would not go lion diet straight from wherever you're coming from. If you're doing a full reset, I would do a slow roll. I'm so glad you asked that question. Um, Actually, this is a perfect masterclass to talk about that. So we talked about, right? You don't have to be in ketosis to get fat adapted. In your case, and for anybody who's coming from standard American diet, or you just been off the wagon, eating all the things, and you want to get back into ketosis, please do it slowly because it is going to be painful if you just dive right in, especially lion diet. You can get die-off effects, you can get Herxheimer's reactions. So you want to be careful about the way that you do this. I would first and foremost just clean up the diet. Just look at eating real whole foods. I would not be thinking about the things you're not going to eat. I would just think about getting as much nutrient density from as much variety of real food as possible. Number one, first step, just cut out processed packaged junk food. That will do wonders for your system. It will severely reduce inflammation. Then you can start to look at cutting one thing at a time, but I would definitely not go straight into lion diet. Matter of fact, I have a masterclass perfect for you, Tammy. I'm going to tag you under my food selection masterclass. I talk a lot about elimination diets and things that you need to consider for doing that. So I got you there, and the gut health. I think you might have seen the gut health masterclass from last week. That might be helpful as well. But I'll definitely tag you under the food selection one. I think that'll be perfect for you. Super glad to see you active in the group again, by the way. Thrilled that you're here. We're going to help you. We got you, girl. Post in here. Y'all may have seen, I've got some really great experienced people in the group. So ask your questions, and if I can't get to them or I don't see them right away, I know that you'll get support from the rest of the ladies here. So I love y'all. This is great. I think something about not being on the Zoom, being able to be on the chat in the group on the live stream is really getting y'all to engage more. So I'm happy about that because I love it when you can come on and ask questions and comment. Love you, ladies. Crystal, digestive problems, what's going on? Message me in the app. Let's chat. Tell me what's going on. Let me help you. I think I saw that you checked in, so I'll actually be reading your check-in tonight. So I'll holler at you. Hopefully you shared some details there. And if not, no detail is ever too much. So please do share. I got you. All right, ladies, we're a little bit over our hour, but I'm thrilled with the chat we had tonight. So I will see y'all next week for our next masterclass. Drop your requests. I think maybe it's time for another poll or an open-ended question about what you want to see next. So we'll drop that in the group this week. I got some resources coming at you. I'm going to start doing little cheat sheets for each of these masterclasses. So I've got one for the gut health masterclass I'm going to drop. I'll be working on the protein one. This one is going to come with the published blog post. It's just, we're going gangbusters. I'm excited. So glad to have y'all with me on this ride. Have a wonderful week. Go crush your goals, and I'll see you in the group.